last, at last. Okay. Enough. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Ace on Music. I am joined, as always, by my faithful producer, Mark, and my trusted assistant, Sean.
Woohoo. Hello, everyone.
So, another week goes by, and I was thinking about what we could talk about this week, and I was sitting there in my backyard listening to some music the other night, and it occurred to me that I'm actually a very big fan of lyrics, especially really clever turns of lyrics in songs. To me, you can have a really great melodic line in a song, but the lyrics are what's going to make it a classic. So I thought it would be fun for the three of us to talk about some of the favorite lyrics we've had from some of our favorite artists over the years. So I thought I would start it off by letting you go first.
Me?
Sure.
Well, let me say something. I'm not a big lyric person because I'm a drummer. I'm a rhythm section.
Sure.
So when lyrics stand out to me, it means a lot to me.
That makes sense. Okay.
You know, and I think we talked about this not too long ago, but you can have a silly lyric, and if it means something to you, it can make you cry. You know?
For sure.
And and you can have a heart, felt lyric with a lot of emotions. It can make you laugh. It depends on what you're thinking at the time and how you're feeling at the time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a time and a place, a juxtaposition for certain of the lyrics that have struck me. Like, one of my personal favorite lyricists is a guy named David Sylvian. We've talked a little bit about him before, Japan and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But probably my favorite lyric that he ever did is when he left Japan back in the 80s and he started doing solo records. His first solo record was called Brilliant Trees, and it had this song called Nostalgia on it. And it's an incredibly haunting and beautiful song, but it's very much rooted, like when you hear it, it's got a real sad note to it. And there was one line in it that just struck me with the imagery, and it was, "I'm cutting branches from the trees, shaped by years of memories, to exorcise the ghosts from inside of me." And I just thought, what a poignant lyric that is. That's so clever. Are there any things like that have ever affected you that way, Mark?
I mean, unlike that guy over there, Sean.
I'm a drummer. Give me a break.
I mean, lyrics are almost everything to me, and whether it's Joni Mitchell singing about going round and round and getting older over time, or Cat Stevens talking about how an old friend from, that they thought had passed on was kind of sitting by the grave, or those stories. But I mean, I'm a fanatic. I'm a folk singer-songwriter guy, and lyrics are our life. I will tell you, I mean, there are a couple that do stand out. When I think about lyrics, it's not just that genre. It's my love for lyrics, and I have one. I mean, I always want to go back to Eminem's stuff, because you talk his palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti. I mean, it's
very clever.
It's lightning. But some of my favorite lyrics, and I'm going to just throw this out there, are in the evolution of the songs. Okay. Because the lyrics get cleaned up and tightened to the point where they almost become too polished. And I've had the opportunity to listen to many, many demos, including demos for very famous people. And my favorite was an early version of Bruce Springsteen's Thunder Road.
Okay.
And the concept of the song is very deep. I mean, he's comparing, escape to the car and to the love and to all of these wonderful things. But he wrote in one of the early not recorded versions, this old Ford car is going to overheat. Make up your mind. We've got to get it back out on the street because this car is as lonely as me, and together we can make it. And baby, I can't lay the stars at your feet, but I've got this old car, and she's pretty tough to beat, and there's plenty of room in this front seat. Together we can make it.
Springsteen's a genius. I mean, it was his birthday, I think, yesterday or something like that, but I mean, I know exactly what you mean with him. Like, I'll never forget the opening two lines to Hungry Heart. They have that big bombastic music going on, and then got a wife and kids in Baltimore, Jack. I went for a ride and never went back. You know, you just, whoa, you know.
Yeah, the artists that didn't hit the power chords first, some of them they became obsessive about the lyrics. I mean, Quiet Riot's "Come on, Feel the Noise," "Girls Rock Your Boys," I think is a brilliant line.
Actually written by Slade. So.
Oh, there you go. It's a brilliant line in its simplicity and in what it's able to derive and bring out of you.
Absolutely.
And I don't, you know, but you know, the intricacy of the poet is magnificent, but the simplicity sometimes that comes across. I mean, that one particular song, you know, "Come on, Feel the Noise." I mean, I can't escape the power of those words. They are poetic. They are complicated in this utter simplicity. I mean, think about what that brings out of you. I mean, football teams have rallied around that. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Slade in general, they're very unknown here in America, but they're massive over in the UK. I mean, they have what I could be wrong about this, but they had a Christmas song that comes out every year in England. You can't get away from it. I know I'm almost always in England, except this year, in December, and you hear it constantly. And it's a massive hit for them, and it's just. And then they had a number of other hits but they just never made an impact in America. I don't know why, but you know. But for me, you know, you talk about Springsteen and he's a fantastic lyricist. I'm also drawn to, as I was going through the ideas for this, there was one-hit wonder that, well, at least I think he's a one-hit wonder. It's the only one song I know from him. It was a New Zealand guy named Gautier. Do you know him? He had this song that came out called "Somebody That I Used to Know," and it featured another singer named, I think he's actually Australian, and this girl that was on the song with him, Kimbra, is from New Zealand. Anyway, if you listen to the lyrics of the song, it's this guy basically doing a post-breakup conversation with this girl, you know, saying like, you know, we're not friends anymore, you know, you won't even return my records and all that stuff. And what you find out later in the song, and why I found the lyrics so clever, was that when Kimbra comes in and starts singing her part, you think that she initially, when she starts singing, that she's the girl, excuse me, the girl that he's been singing to through this whole thing. But in fact, you realize as she's singing her part that she's actually his current girlfriend, and that he's totally hung up on his ex, and she's calling him out on it. So, which I thought was just such a clever turn of lyric, and it becomes an incredibly poignant moment in that song when she basically says that you're just hung up on somebody that you used to know, you know.
Right.
But so what are some of the ones that really impacted you?
Well, you know, to me, lyrics, I mean, like, it's the way you connect with people, you know, like, I love lyrics that mean more than one thing. Like 3 segments to a lyric to me is like past, present, future. You know, like Eclipse from Dark Side.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah, you know, all that you touch, all that you see, all that you taste. I mean, you know the lyrics, right? And it's light and dark. It's good and bad. It's a connection with people. You know, same like my second pick would be it would be "The End" by The Doors, and you know, I think it was originally wrote
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison.
What a lyricist!
Yeah, you know, I think you know, it was originally wrote about a girlfriend, but then as he matured, the lyrics can go. It's you know, it's like a goodbye to childhood. You know, I mean, there's certain ways to think about lyrics. You know,
jumping back to "Dark Side of the Moon," I mean, Roger Waters, obviously a fantastic lyricist, but from that same record. We have a mutual friend who's actually had a line from that album tattooed on his arm right along here, and it's "Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way."
Time, right?
From Time, yeah.
You know, it's funny you say that. I was gonna pick that song, but you know, that and Eclipse. To me, it's like the ending to that segment to Time. Is like it like if you listen to me, "Dark Side of the Moon's" one song.
It is a piece, but I mean, Waters and his lyrics, man. Like you listen to things like well, Comfortably Numb. I mean, that lyric is just amazing, where you're basically hearing the story of this rock star who's on his last edge and has basically got to get medicated to get on stage to go out there, and he's just floating in this haze and all that stuff. And I mean, you can picture it. I mean, when that part of the song comes around, when he goes like, when I was a child, I had a fever, and I felt like a big balloon and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The music so perfectly interacts with the lyrics there that it's just lifting it to a new level.
Yeah, and that's how I feel when I hear that song. It's not just something that I'm listening to. It's like it's so personal to me that it's written for me how I feel, you know. And it's interesting. There's a remix version by the film composer Hans Zimmer.
Oh yes,
for the new TV show Dune.
I saw that in the trailer. Yeah,
I didn't know. I just recently discovered it. I saw the trailer and they he composed Eclipse.
I've actually heard, Mark, that it's actually revitalized interest in the younger people in Pink Floyd. So.
Yeah, you know, greatness doesn't take a lot.
Right. Exactly.
But I don't want to pass up two of the other great lyricists, because again, it's so easy to get, it's almost so easy to forget perfection, and you've got folks like Jim Croce. If I could save time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, to spend them with you. It's incredible. Again, we're back to almost the simplicity. How can you say something so utterly complicated and capture it? And then there are lines that come out from Ben Folds, who talks about hope. That hope is a thief. And they take concepts that we think are so obvious in the great writers, they turn them on their head, and they say, hope is a bastard, hope is a thief. Hope is what steals the time that you could have spent, and and then folks like Lyle Lovett that throw things together like about funerals, and you don't realize that it's him that died,
right?
And and the majesty of. I went to a funeral. Lord, it made me happy seeing all those people I ain't seen since the last time somebody died.
You make me think of one of the bands that I actually take care of, Black Star Riders. Their last album, there was one lyric that Ricky started that you just triggered on that Jim Croce thing, where it starts off with, "Love's a four-letter word, hate's a four-letter word, love's a four-letter lie." And I just thought, I always loved that alliteration in that lyric there, and it made me think very much of what you were talking about. But I have a funny story about Ricky Warwick. He's the lyricist and the lead singer for Black Star Riders. He told me a story. He does solo records in addition to the Black Star Rider stuff, and he once told me that one of the great fears of any songwriter is when their friend comes casually up to them with a notepad and says, "I've written some songs, I want you to tell me how they are." And he always feels like, well, what do? Do you tell somebody what you actually think, or do you make your friend feel good? So he has a very dear friend named Sam Robinson. Have you ever met Sam?
I don't know. Have I?
I don't remember if you have or not. Anyway, Sam was a childhood friend of Ricky's. They grew up in Belfast, Ireland together.
I probably have.
And Sam grew up in, or he ended up going into the military police and being involved in Northern Ireland during all the Troubles. And it really affected him. He's had a lot of his friends killed and things like that. And so he went into therapy for it, and one of the things they had him do was creative writing. And so he started funneling his energy into lyrics, and one day he got the guts to go bring them to Ricky and say, would you look at these and tell me what you think? And Ricky was kind of reluctant because he didn't want to hurt his friend's feelings, but he said as soon as he started reading them, he could hear the music instantly. It was... And Sam has become an amazing lyricist, and he's written with Ricky quite a bit. I mean, one of my favorites is they did an album called Hearts on Trees, which was we did two albums at the same time, both one acoustic, one electric. But this one had this song called Schwaben Redoubt on it, which was all about the battle at the Seine in the First World War, and the lyric goes, Billy Drainen lost his sash in a house of ill repute. Liam Kelly found it 3 days later with his flute. Billy call me Billy, Liam call me Liam, just looking for some comfort in the French midsummer's rain. And you instantly can see this picture of these young soldiers in the First World War going off to war for the first time, completely naive about the world and just getting thrown into the blender and going on. And also the fact that, throughout the song, you understand that, obviously there are factions in Belfast that would fight, and there's one lyric, where it says, if we were back home, we'd be fighting right now, but right now, let's go fight together and do the victory. So,
it's amazing the power. I'm always brought back to some of these lyric stories. Obviously, you could see my passion and how I kind of jump out of the chair when it comes time, but. One of the more incredible songs I think that's been written, certainly one that has inspired a lot, was called "The City of New Orleans."
Oh, yes.
Steve Goodman. And the story is that Arlo Guthrie was sitting, according to Arlo, I think, I heard the story as part of the tribute to Steve Goodman, where Arlo was sitting at the bar drinking a beer and didn't want to be bothered by anybody, and young Steve went up to him and said, I have a song to play you. And Arlo said, listen, as long as I'm drinking this beer, you can play me whatever you want. And he played the City of New Orleans, and Arlo said, that was the longest and the best beer of my life. And it obviously became an iconic song for Arlo. Oh, yeah. Arlo picked it up and never looked back.
Well, talk about lyrics. I mean, Arlo Guthrie in general, I mean, his songs are so lyrically driven, and they're just, I mean, Alice's Restaurant, the motorcycle song, or, they're just all about the lyrics. And he's such a genius storyteller in his lyrics. But, dragging it in a different direction, I'm a bit of a wordsmith myself. I love the English language. I love, words and how they're used. In fact, it makes me think to some of my favorite guys who are like The Residents or Yes. I remember John Anderson describing lyrics that you don't have to have your lyrics mean anything. He was all about the tonal quality of the words. What sound were those words making? And so if you go and listen to a lot or read a lot of the lyrics to Yes songs, you'll read them and you go, what the heck were they smoking? Because that doesn't mean anything, But it was about the tonal quality of the words at that point. They didn't really care about whether or not it was meaning anything. And The Residents were the same way. There are two examples of that. But
Well, Springsteen with Blinded by the Light, he's been asked forever what that song means.
That's true.
And, Man, Man, Drummers, Bummers, and Indians in the Summer with the Teenage Diplomats, it turns out it means nothing.
Or one of the most famous songs from Iron Butterfly, Inagata Davida, which is actually a very drunken misinterpretation of In the Garden of Eden.
He used to do, who did things like that was Danzig, believe it or not. He would have lyrics and he would improvise certain phrases, and it was just like, what the hell did he just say?
You could hear that in the Misfits, too.
Yeah.
But
he would change words versus what he wrote on lyrics just to make it fit in with the music.
And what is that song from? Was it the 70s that nobody knew what it meant, but they started banning the song because they
Louie Louie.
Louie Louie. Yeah. Yes. Right? They were banning the song.
That's what I'm talking about. Those are great lyrics, man. They just come up with these ideas and they stick in it.
But just dragging it back to what I was saying before with being a bit of a wordsmith, one of the things I love in lyrics is when a writer has taken a very complex, I'll use the term complex term, and somehow made it work in the lyric. And you sit there and you go, wow, I don't think anybody's ever used that word before in a song. Like a good example of that is Megadeth. They had an album called Euthanasia, one of my favorites from them, and there's one of my favorite tracks on it. Was never a single; it's a deep cut called "Addicted to Chaos," and the pre-chorus always starts with "In a dream I cannot see, tangled abstract fallacy. Random turmoil builds in me. I'm addicted to the chaos. And I thought, Mustaine somehow managed to use tangled abstract fallacy and random turmoil within one stanza of a song, and I just went, wow, I love you.
I wonder what he was going through at that time.
Well, you know, he's a pretty bright guy too. So, but
we used to bet each other that they couldn't use certain words in songs.
really,
They'd come up with unrhymable tunes. Like, yeah, no, it's, you know, it's a good songwriter that's able to find a place for a word.
well, that brings up an interesting point. There are a lot of songs out there that, you know, try to use a rhyme, but they haven't actually done a rhyme. I mean, it's two words that, you know, technically it's not a rhyme, but you kind of let it slide because it kind of works, you know. But
A lot of that.
Yeah, and you know, the rhyming dictionaries. I mean, the rhyming dictionaries have created more meaning than, you know, some of the smartest songwriters. You don't know what to put, so you just open up the rhyming dictionary and come up with it.
Well, somebody once told me that one of the few words in the English language that has no rhyme to it is the word orange.
Orange, yes.
And there was a band in Canada before I moved back down here that was called Rhymes with Orange.
Leave it to the Canadians to figure that one out, right?
Yep.
Now, what about controversial lyrics? Like really harsh controversy. Like, to me, the first thing I think of is John Lennon's God.
Okay.
Like, you know, I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in the Bible. I don't believe in anything. Like, that's pretty hardcore, right?
Really is, especially for the time that he was doing it at.
Yeah.
Of course, this is the same man who very famously went into a news interview and said that if the Beatles were playing and Jesus came back and gave a talk across the street, more people would come to the Beatles.
Hey, you know, he was talking facts, right? It's pretty, you know.
True.
It's pretty brutal, you know, to say, but you know.
Sometimes you find lyrics, really poignant lyrics, coming out of people you didn't really expect. Like, one of the lyricists that I've worked with over the years that I was most impressed with, actually, is one that doesn't get recognized for that, and that's Lemmy. The stuff that, you know, he wrote so many great songs. I mean, when you hear Mama, I'm Coming Home from Ozzy Osbourne, that's Lemmy. Lemmy and Ozzy wrote that song together. That was a massive hit. But one of my favorite lyrics from him came from one of the most sort of underappreciated Motorhead albums. It was called March or Die. It was a song called I Ain't No Nice Guy Anymore. And there was one lyric in it that really struck me as poignant, and it was, he was lamenting about how he got to where he is now in his life. And he says the line, but time went by and I found out a thing or two. My shine wore off as time wore on. And I just thought, wow, I love that alliteration going on there and that turn of phrase. So
Yeah, it's a great lyric.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier, Mark, Eminem, absolutely one of the great lyricists of the hip hop era. But if you're going to give a nod to Eminem, I'm going to have to give a nod to Dr. Dre. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Dre, I mean, NWA, I mean, those albums were groundbreaking. I mean, when
you want to go deeper, Run DMC.
Run DMC, I mean, amazing lyricists as well.
Gosh. Beastie Boys.
King of Rock, Beastie Boys. I mean, yeah, I mean, you got some. Those are. I'm attracted to those kind of bands.
Yeah.
Because of the lyrics. You know, I'm the kind of guy who has books on his shelf. When publishers decide to put out books of the lyrics of a particular artist, I'm the guy who runs to go buy those. You know, another lyricist that I'm very enamored with, Robert Smith from The Cure.
Robert Smith.
I mean, some of his lyrics have impacted me hugely. If you listen to one of their earlier songs, the thing that I like about his lyrics and the music in this case, and this is not something we have talked about yet, but if you listen to a song from The Cure called A Forest, and it's all about this guy using the analogy of being lost in a forest with being lost in a relationship. But the music is very haunting, and you can instantly picture yourself walking in these woods as it's getting dark, and then, you know, and then he's like, "I'm lost in a forest all alone. The girl was never there. It's always the same. I'm running towards nothing again and again and again." You know, and I love when you find that perfect blend between the music, the lyrics, and the mood, and it can do really incredible things. And you know who one of the masters of that is Nick Cave.
Oh, you took the words. I was ready to say that. We're forgetting about Nick Cave, dude.
Wow.
Like love songs, hatred songs, brutal murders. That guy mastered lyrics, on such a level that I don't know if anyone's a Nick Cave fan.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, if you ever listen to his lyrics, they're really deep, and and he's got this thing now. It's called, I think it's something letters that he does, and he just pretty much writes an email on how he feels, and he's up to, I think, like 200 in last year or something like that, and they're just someone ask him a question, but he's very powerful lyricist.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with you. And if you want to talk about great lyricists, another one that I just have to mention because I couldn't be true to myself if I wasn't. Growing up in Canada, one of my favorite bands of all time is Rush. I mean, and a big part of Rush for me, and it's a little bit unusual, but in that dynamic, the drummer in that band wrote all of the lyrics.
Neil being Peart. A drummer, you forget that he's a great lyricist.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was so well read, he was so intelligent, and he would put these amazing concepts and build these incredible pictures in your mind with his lyrics. Like I'll take for example off the top of my head, on the Moving Pictures album, they did a song called Limelight, and he wrote the lyrics because the one thing about being a rock star that Neil hated was the adulation. He hated when people wanted his autograph or any of that stuff. He didn't understand any of that. He just he couldn't pretend that the people he had just met were like his best friend.
I get it.
And he wrote that song, and if you listen to the lyrics, it's his telling his side of the story to the world. Some of the lyrics I can think off the top of my head, it's impossible to pretend that I can't remember exactly, but he's talking about how I can't treat a new person like a long lost friend. It's just not in me. Living in the limelight, it's just not for him. But anyway, that's kind of where. Are you very much into Rush there at all?
Oh yeah, I loved Rush. Now I never paid a lot of attention to the lyrics because of that beat.
Yeah, right. That's why we forget Neil Peart's a great lyricist because he's a
because it has such a wall of sound associated with the tunes.
Yeah, mine's going somewhere else, right?
That's right. So and I know, and this is not necessarily great lyrics, but it's the power of lyrics and how they've been weaponized. I mean, not just like blur lines, kind of. Hard to say it wasn't promoting non-consensual sex while millions of people danced like crazy to it. But the Taylor Swift stuff and the Kanye West and the way they integrate the battles, Nicki Minaj, and they actually fight wars with the lyrics.
Yes.
And it's a very powerful war. It gets a lot of attention.
What about the rivalry with NWA and Ice Cube?
Oh,
that made them both famous, right?
Yeah, they wrote a lot of songs about each other.
Yeah, right.
But and it can also go in a different direction. I mean, you're all familiar with the Sex Pistols, right?
Yeah,
now,
of course.
Malcolm, their manager, was kind of the mastermind behind the whole thing, and they wrote this one song, and he went to Johnny Rotten and he said, "Okay, I want you to write this song about submission, like being part of an S&M thing. It's got to be about submission." And he, not really wanting to be told what to do, decided to write the song literally as a submission, as in underwater submarine.
Brilliant.
And I thought,
that's
awesome, right?
Yeah, right.
But the Sex Pistols can't be ignored either, because at a time where it was nowhere near as free as it is now, they were putting some lyrics out that I mean, Anarchy in the UK, I am an Antichrist is the first line of the song, that they were so banned in England at the time that when the charts came out and they were #1 and the record stores would post the charts in the windows, the #1 slot would just be blank because they wouldn't even put the Sex Pistols on there.
How awesome are you to have one album and that's it?
Yeah, one album, and it's like
And fuck
made
you.
you a legend. So,
That's like a musician's dream, right?
yeah. Well, anyway, this was fun. So, thank you to both Mark and Sean for participating in this one, and thank you all for your continued support. Remember to subscribe to us on whatever format you like the best: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Podcasts. And also, if you want to check out our other show, it's called Ace on Music After Hours. It's only for our Patreon.com supporters. And come over there and check it out, and I think you'll enjoy it. So until you see us next time, you can always send your feedback to acetalksmusic@gmail.com, and we'll see you next week.